Hi, welcome to another Level Up. In this one, we're going to look at playing around the chord changes. So rather than just having the chart in front of you and strumming away on whatever rhythm suits the song, whatever rhythm the people you're playing with are playing, and changing chord at the appropriate time, we're going to think about how we can create music, create melodies, riffs, patterns that work with those chords but aren't just those chords. Almost like if you're listening to a rock band and there's a rhythm guitarist and a lead guitarist. Okay, the lead guitarist might take a solo, but what's that lead player doing when they're not soloing? Are they just strumming the same things as the rhythm guitarist, or are they adding little parts in between the vocals, little melodies, little riffs? Now there's no tablature for this, because I'm going to make this up as we go along, and I encourage you to try and make up your own ones. For the purposes of this, we're going to just stick with a 12 bar in the key of G, and I've got a play along for a 12 bar in G, so you can put that video on and you can experiment over the top of it. Now we're not trying to play a solo, we're just trying to develop the chords so that we have a part to play. So here's our basic pattern. It's G for 4 bars, 3rd bar, 4th bar, then a C for 2 bars, then a G for 2 bars. Now our 3rd chord, D7 for 1 bar, C for 1 bar, G for 1 bar and D7, and that D7 is kind of our turnaround chord. If we were going to finish, we wouldn't put that there, but if we're going to go round again, that leads us nicely back to the G. But if you go and have a look at the backing track video that I put a link to, that has a chart on the screen for that as well. So when I'm thinking about trying to improvise over something like this, create something that I can do that's not the same as everybody else, there are a few things I think about using. One are chord tones, the notes that belong in the chord. And I could do something like that just by picking out the notes of a chord individually. So I'm just picking out, and then my C chord. It's not very exciting, but it works. I could even try and find different chord inversions maybe. So I could do my G here, and then a G up here. So that's the first thing I think about, using notes that belong in the chord, regardless of where I'm finding that chord on the neck. The next thing I might think about are notes that could be in the chord if the chord was extended a little bit. So instead of a G, I might think about a G6 chord, and that gives me one more note to play with. A G6, if you've ever played this shuffle pattern, I'm just playing my G chord, but I'm adding my little finger on the 4th fret of the C string, and then taking it off again. In fact, you might recognise that as a way of going from a G to an E minor. It's a great way of doing that. But that E minor chord could also be thought of as a G6. That gives me another note to play. So I could play the 2nd fret of my C string, put my little finger down, then play the other notes in the chord. So 2nd fret C string, 4th fret C string, and then the 3rd fret on my E string and the 2nd fret on my A string that are already in the chord of G. I can mess with the rhythm, try and put them on different beats, but there are my notes. There's a little palette of notes. I can go up and down, I can mix them around. Another thing I often think about if I'm doing this kind of thing are passing notes, and one of the best passing notes is to go from 1 fret too low to the note you want. That one will be the wrong note, that will be the right note. Quite often, if you're trying to do something that's a little bit bluesy sounding, it's good to try and pick out the note that makes the chord you're playing major or minor. So in the case of my G, if I know a G chord and I know a G minor chord, I can see which notes changed. Only one note's changed. It's this second fret on my A string in the G chord, and it's the first fret on my A string in the G minor chord. If I play that first fret over a G major chord, that's not the right note. But if I immediately slide it up to the right note, the second fret, that's a very bluesy sound. It's something we're used to hearing, not just in the blues, but in everything influenced by the blues. So it's quite a good sound for rock and roll music. So let's try adding that. So now I've got my G chord. I can play my second fret on my C string, because that's in the G chord. I can add the fourth fret. Then I can go through the rest of the chord, the third fret on my E string, but when I get to my A string, I'm going to slide the whole shape down, hit the first string, which is now being held at the first fret, and slide up. So I have this. Okay, I've probably got enough there to come up with a little pattern. 2, 3, 4, 1. Something like that. Okay, that's sounding good so far. Now it changes to my C chord. Now, often in a blues I might do the same things I've just done, but maybe my extension won't be a C6. Maybe I'll try and turn this C into a C7. Now, even though we're not being asked to play a C7 in this 12-bar blues, that seventh sound is very bluesy. So quite often, even though the person strumming the chords won't play a C7, the person playing a pattern over it will, and that will sound cool and bluesy, and it will fit in rock and roll and things like that. So here's a nice way we can make a C7 chord that you might not have come across. If I put my little finger down on the fourth fret of the C string, just where I put it down, still playing the G chord, just where I put it down to make that G into a G6, keep my ring finger where it is, but take off the first two and add my first finger at the first fret of the A string. Now I have this shape, which looks a bit odd. Fourth fret C string, third fret E string, and that one is the first fret of the A string, just where it would be for a regular open C7. It gives me this nice transition because those notes are part of my G chord pattern, but they're also now part of my C7 chord. What else could I add? Well, I did have the 6 in that G chord. Where's the 6 in my C? Oh, that's a C6. Okay, I could use my open first string. That's great because that gives me time to go to this shape, play that open first string before I put my index finger down. Now, before I go any further on this, it's worth thinking about phrasing and repetition, because I could noodle around with these notes all day and it wouldn't make a lot of sense. But if you listen to bands that do this kind of thing, whether it's on guitar, this could be a piano part where the guitar player's playing the chord like that and the piano player is dancing around the chords, adding these little patterns. They'll repeat themselves. Then when the chord changes, they'll not repeat it again because it has to change with the chord, but they'll keep some elements of it the same. Maybe the rhythm, the direction the notes move. And that way it makes sense to us. So let's see if I can get something similar on the C7 to what I had on the G chord. Start with my G chord, start on the third string, the C string, play that, add my little finger on the fourth fret of the C string, play the second string, part of the G chord. As I go to play the first string, slide down, play it, slide up, play it again, and then I'm going to play my second string again, which is just where it is in the G chord. And then again. And and then leave a space. So that's the same pattern, but the rhythm's slightly shifted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So that's the same pattern, and that fills up 2 bars. So I do that whole thing twice to fill my 4 bars of G. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. That's filled up my first 4 bars of that G chord, while everyone else is just strumming G. Let's see if I can get something that sounds a bit like that with the same techniques on that C7. So I've gone to this C7, which is 4th fret on the C string, 3rd fret on the E string, 1st fret on the A string, but we talked about being able to play that string open. Now, remember we talked about the major minor note in the G? Let's find the same thing in the C. That'll help us do something that works in the same way. If we're playing a C further up the neck, a barred C here, which looks like a B flat chord but at the 3rd fret, if we wanted to make that minor, we would take off this 2nd finger. So in other words, we're going from a note at the 4th fret to a note at the 3rd fret. Now when we play our C7 like this, that one we were going to, here's the 4th fret. So what if we were to slide that note from the 3rd to the 4th? We get this. Then our ring finger's on the 3rd fret of the E string, then the open A string, then the 1st fret on the A string. And last time we came back down again after we'd reached the highest note on the G chord, so let's do the same thing. Back down to the 2nd string. So now we get this. Okay, so we're playing almost the same thing. It's familiar, but it follows the chord. So let's put those together, and we've got the first 2 lines of a 12-bar blues in G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. The C7. Back to the G. Now we need our D7 to our C7, back to the G, and maybe the turnaround, the last line of the blues. Now we don't have to do that same pattern exactly each time. And also we only have 1 bar of D7 here. But let's see what we can come up with. If we have a D7, just a 2-finger open D7 here, let's see if we can use some of those same techniques. So one of them was to add extra notes to the chord. Well, this is already a D7 in the chart, so we're already playing the 7. The other one was to find the note that makes it major or minor and play the minor note and slide it up to the major one. Well, we know in a D minor chord we have a finger here, and in a D major chord we have a finger here. So this note, the 1st fret to the 2nd fret of our E string, is the note that makes the difference between D minor, 1st fret, and D major. And we've got that note in our D7. It's right here on the 2nd fret. So we could take that note, slide it from the 1st to the 2nd. So let's try that. Right, let's just go up to the next note in the chord, which can be our open 1st string, and back down again. So we get 1st fret, 2nd fret, open 1st string, back to the 2nd fret on our 2nd string. Where could we go next? Why don't we go down to the D note? We're going back through the notes of the chord again, and we've been using chord tones. So 1st fret on the E string, 2nd fret, open 1st string, back to the 2nd fret on the E string, and then down to the 2nd fret on the C string, because that's the note of D. It belongs in our D chord. Okay, And that's it. That's all we need on that D chord because it moves after one bar. Now we need something on our C7, but again, just for one bar, so something shorter. Well, we've got our C7 here. We could play just our open, open, one, or open, 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 one, as many or as few notes as you want. 2 strings, 3 strings, 4 strings, up to you. And we need to head back to G. Well, we did this before. We used the open note on the first string because that's part of our C chord, C6. And that's going to go da, da. Where's that heading towards? Ah, G. That works nice. And if I just play 3 or the 2 middle strings of a G and not that high note, it will feel like it's going down. Nice little satisfying resolution. So that part of that line so far could be and when I get to there, I could just squeeze one of those in. Same as our first time round. But I've only got one bar and I need a D7 on the end. Let's just play a D7. So let's see what we've got for the whole 12 bar pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. To the beginning again. So have a play around with those things. You don't have to play what I just played. You can use similar ideas, you can simplify it, you can try playing different chord inversions around the neck and picking out different tones. But all I was doing was playing chord tones, notes that were in the chord shape I was holding. I was finding the note that made the difference between that chord being major and minor, playing the minor one, i.e. the wrong one, and then sliding it up to the right one, and then finding other notes in the chord I could add. So maybe if I know how to play the chord we're after, like C and a C6, or if the chord isn't already a 7th, I could maybe look at trying to make it into a 7th. Even if I don't just bash away at a C7, I hint at it. Just briefly, that one note that makes it a 7th or a 6th pops up in the pattern. And finally, once I'd found a little pattern, I repeated it. I left space around it, I made a simple statement, then I repeated it, and then when I moved on to another chord, I tried to find something that followed the same kind of pattern. So see which ones you can come up with on your own. Put my 12 bar blues jam track on. Maybe try it once you've got the hang of doing it in G. Try some different keys and see the sorts of things you can find on the ukulele to give you a unique part. It might even lead to composing a tune. I could play that pattern there and I could give it a name and I could put that out as a piece. And maybe you could do the same. I hope you've enjoyed this one and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.